this video, we're going to be looking very closely at folders in PBR Painter. So folders are a new feature added in PBR Painter 3, and they're a really useful way of organizing your layers into different groups. But they also let you do more interesting things like add masks to groups of layers or assign groups of layers to the same ID map colors. So you can add a folder in the same way that you add a layer by clicking this little folder icon. And just like a layer, you need to specify the name. So I could just call this one folder 1. And you can also opt to move existing layers. So if you already have layers in your material, you can move them into this folder that you're now creating. So I don't in this case, so I'm going to click OK. And now that I have this folder, I can now start adding layers to this folder. So if I click Add Layer, you'll see that I now have an option to specify the folder. So by default, it's put me in this current folder because that's the one I've got selected, which is good. Or you can just add it to no folder as well. So I'm going to call this one Layer 1A. So it's in the first folder and it's the first layer. And from within a folder, the layers just act like normal layers. So you can just do normal things like change the colors and the other channels as well. And at the moment, this folder is having no effect on what this layer is doing. And if I create another layer, again, it's put me in this same folder. So I'm going to call this one Layer 1B. And now these layers are within the same folder. But again, then this folder is not actually doing anything to change how these layers are behaving. However, what I can do is I can click on this folder and now in the UI, I can actually hide those layers. So that's really useful to organize your layers so that you don't have many layers kind of flooding the UI in here. What you can do at this level is you can now do things like change the opacity of the color. And this is changing the opacity across all the layers that are within that folder. You can change the opacity of the whole folder. So now I'm actually removing everything in that folder. But more importantly, you can add masks to folders. So now I'm adding masks at the folder level rather than having to add separate masks to all of these different layers. So for example, if I add something like a gradient, now it's actually masking the color and the metallic from this layer, but also the roughness from this layer. And I won't demonstrate it in this video, but you can also do the same thing with ID map. So you can have each folder mapped to a different color in your ID map, and that's going to automatically map all of these different layers without having to actually add an ID map for those specific layers. So within a folder, you can move layers up and down, but you can't move them directly out. If you want to actually change the folder, you can click this icon, and that will let you move it into a different folder or into no folder like that. And when I do that, you can see that now the roughness is now low all over the model because it's no longer being masked. And you can do things like hide folders completely. We can add another folder. And here I can now use this move existing layers. So if I want to grab these layers out of this folder, I can actually do that. So when I add this second folder, what's going to happen is now I've pulled those layers out of this folder into this current folder. And so you can move whole folders up and down like this, and that will move all the layers with them. And you can also do things like import folders from other materials. So all the normal things you can do with layers, you can now do with folders. If you want to delete a folder, you can do that. You can opt to remove the layers as well. So if you don't do that, what's going to happen is that it's just going to delete the folder and the layers are going to come out. But if we move these into this folder like this, and then select this and then delete that with the layers, it's now going to delete everything inside. And that covers all the basics in terms of folders. Obviously, there's many different ways that you can use them and apply them in different scenarios. In general, it's something I'd recommend using pretty much for every material, unless you're working with something extremely simple where you only have 1 or 2 layers. I definitely recommend checking out the project-based tutorial videos where I show how to really make use of these folders to organize many different layers from different materials into a simple structure that's easy to manage and makes really good use of ID maps applied to folders. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching and I'll catch you in another video. Cheers.